What if starting a podcast does mean generating more sales? Let me explain. Now, who doesn't want more sales for their business? But how do you generate more sales by starting a podcast? I'm glad you asked. In this video, I'm going to give you 3 tactical tips and strategies that you can utilize to help increase and generate sales by starting a podcast. Let's get right down to it. The most effective strategy I think you can have regarding having a podcast and relating it to sales and have it translate to sales is by interviewing prospects that you want to do business with. Those large C-level companies that may be in your area or remote or wherever they are, and it's very difficult to get a hold of the decision maker. It's not as easy as just sending an email or a tweet or connecting with them on LinkedIn. It's a bit of a challenge. Well, you're asking for a meeting to attempt to sell them something, and guess what? Well, you are not alone. These individuals get inundated with phone calls and emails and proposals, and I'd like to work with you and work for free, and I'd like to do this and I'd like to do that. And it's an abundance of noise regarding sales chatter, and they understand that, and it goes through a specific filter. However, if you reach out to these individuals inquiring about the best way to have them as a guest on your podcast, well, then you may be onto something. Completely different approach. Why? Well, you're approaching them to attempt to sell them something initially. So by default, you fall on deaf ears. But when you call and say, hey, I'd like to have you on my podcast, that changes the entire dynamic. Why? Because now your approach is with the ego. You have the opportunity to stroke their ego by talking about them. And just like having a conversation or meeting somebody at a cocktail party or a networking event, once you've had a conversation with this individual and you know a little bit more about them both personally and professionally, you've got some rapport built. Once that rapport is built, well, they're more inclined to want to stay in touch with you or better understand what it is you do, or give you the meeting or call you've been looking for to talk about your solution and address any pain points they might have and how your solution might solve it. But first things first, generating more sales with a podcast, start interviewing prospects that you want to do business with. That's right. You ask them to be on your show, you interview them, you develop a relationship with them, and then when you schedule a call at a later date, they're more inclined to have ears open and their mind at the same time to what your ideas or solutions or services or products may be. So get out there and interview some prospects. You'll be surprised how many of them end up turning into long-term profitable relationships. Tip number 2 on how to generate more sales with a podcast: create content around your product, service, specials you're running, offers you're running, new products, innovations, updates, but always lead with value, 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 value. Why do they need to even listen to this episode? Maybe you want to start with a product that's wildly popular or a service that's wildly popular and get on and have the product developer that created that product or the CEO of the company, or if that's you, you get on there and talk about the why behind the product or service. Talk about the why behind the offer. Talk about the why behind the new upgrade or update on the product or service that you're currently doing. Get people excited about it. Speaking of interviews, we talked about interviewing prospects. Why not interview existing customers that are consuming the product already, that are already excited about it? People do business with who they know, like, and trust, and people that are prospects and are looking at the possibility and the potential of working with your company. They like to see other people. That's what we like to do as consumers. We like to see other people consume something and have a good experience to lessen the blow a little bit as far as having something that might not work out. Customer reviews, they've been around for decades. It's word of mouth on steroids now with social media and with the internet there. Most consumers want a recommendation or a testimonial or some piece of social proof that says, this is the right decision that I'm making. So talk about your services, your product, interview people that consume your product, interview your raving fans, and have them talk to your podcast audience, people that may be new to your community. Existing customers tend to convert new people, new prospects into customers just based on the social proof that people see there. A podcast is a phenomenal way. I mean, think about it. If you're thinking about buying a product or a service from a brand, and you look up the brand has a podcast episode about that specific product or service, you're like, this is interesting. And then you hear a customer that's actually consuming it, and you're like, wow, this is cool. You're a lot more inclined to take a closer look at that product or service and actually decide whether or not you want to be a customer based on your educated decision. So, tip number 2, get on that podcast and start interviewing raving fans and talking about products, services, and things that your customer base and prospects will be excited about. All right, third and final tip for generating more sales with your podcast. Are you ready? This is one of the most fundamental and important factors for doing that. Continue to add as much value as you possibly can. I call it pulling back the curtain. That's right. Show them how the product is made. Show them how the service came together. Show them what other experiences have been based on you developing this product or service. But by all means, provide as much value as you possibly can. People see valuable things, they consume them, they want more of them, and they pay you money for them. That's what happens with valuable content. Your podcast is a phenomenal opportunity to be able to do that. Maybe you're storytelling on your podcast. Maybe you're talking about something that just complements your brand. It doesn't directly talk about your product and your service all the time. It highlights things like the previous tip. Highlight your customers. Highlight raving fans. Highlight people that are willing to say amazing things about your product or service because they're your customer. Valuable information. That's why people tune in and consume any type of content. You've got to remember there's a lot of noise out there. Podcasts and videos and Facebook and LinkedIn, and you'll go crazy trying to keep track of them all. So you've got to find your audience where they're at and see what they resonate with. Everyone resonates with value-added information. That's also translated as free tips, free advice, free resources, and really helping customers understand that there's actually a human behind that brand, several humans in most cases. Third and final tip for generating more sales on your podcast: provide as much massive value as you possibly can. Well, I hope you're leaving this video with at least 1 or 2 things that you didn't know before you hit play. I sure do appreciate you tuning in. If you haven't done so already, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. This way you're going to get updates as new episodes become available. And if you feel so inclined, leave us a review and tell your friends and family all about us, will you? Until next time.